Hello, I am going to go ahead and get started. This is Debbie Hatch from Pinnacle Personnel Services. I'm doing Friday Night Live in the afternoon. And I really do need to reschedule the Friday Night Lives to a different day of the week. This has been a constantly changing evolution. When COVID first hit and I started doing the live sessions, I was doing them Monday through Friday, every day at 9 o'clock, and that got to be a little bit too much. And so then I went down to Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and that got to be a little bit too much. And they were always at 9 o'clock in the morning. And then people started going back to the work centers, so they weren't available Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 9 o'clock. So I switched it to Friday night. But Friday night isn't working out really well for me either because I finished my work week. I would like to be able to go and do something. I'm having a pizza party with the grandchildren Friday night at soon as I hop off the Friday Night Live, so I need to pick another day. The hard part for me is actually picking that day because I'm getting back to travel. So I'm not usually in the classroom Mondays or Fridays. I could choose one of those 2 days, but I might be traveling on Monday and Friday if I'm teaching somewhere on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So I'm still trying to figure that out. Bear with me. But in the meantime, then I'm just going to do the live sessions when I have an opportunity to do those, whether that's Friday night or not. And I will post them on both YouTube and on my Facebook channel so that you have an opportunity to go back and watch them later on if you didn't catch me live. So today what I want to talk a little bit about is Roth Conversions, and Brandon had asked me to talk about this, so I'm a couple weeks behind. Last Friday I didn't do a live. I was prepping for the Nevada State powerlifting championship meet that I went to. I did okay on Saturday morning. I got 4 Texas records and 1 national record. But obviously Friday night, the night before all of that lifting, I just didn't have anything ready to go for a Facebook Live. So Brandon, I'm sorry. It's taken me a couple of weeks to get this back to you, but I am going to talk about pros and cons of doing a Roth conversion. And I'm going to specifically talk to this from the Thrift Savings Program, or the TSP. I want to say this right up front, and I've got a slide for it later on too. I am not a certified financial planner. I'm not going to play one on the internet. I am not a tax attorney. I am not a public accountant. So what I'm talking to you about today should not be considered financial advice of any type. I'm giving you some information. You take that information, you research it more for yourself, you get your personal situation addressed, and then you make your decisions. Hopefully, I can give you some things to think about that maybe you haven't thought about before, but I'm not giving you advice, so I want to be perfectly clear on that. Okay, so when we talk about our federal employees, we have 3 financial buckets that we can draw from. I'm not going to get into all of them today, but we have our retirement. That money is housed in the Civil Service Retirement and Disability Fund. And that's going to provide a monthly pension to us once we retire from the federal government. It doesn't matter whether we're under CSRS or FERS or CSRS offset. That's a topic for another day. In addition to paying into retirement, though, our FERS employees and our offsets pay into Social Security and will therefore be eligible to receive a payment out of the Social Security pot once they're 62 or older. A discussion for another day. The third financial pot that we have is our Thrift Savings Plan, or our TSP. And employees voluntarily can contribute to their TSP account. It functions similarly to the way a 401k would function for a private sector employer, where we put money in there, our employer puts money in there, we decide what to invest in, we have some flexibility in changing our mind with what we're investing in, etc. We can put up to the annual amount in our TSP. And this annual amount can change. It could change every year. Pretty typically, it's been changing every 2 years. But for 2021, we can contribute up to $19,500 into our own thrift. And that doesn't include anything that we get from the government. That's from ourselves. Additionally, if we're going to turn 50 or older, we can contribute another $6,500 personally into our TSP under something that's called catch up. So if I'm under 50, the max is 19,500. If I'm going to turn 50 or older, the max becomes 26,000. Again, I want to be clear on this because it comes up in class a lot of times. This is from me, the person. It does not include any additional automatic contribution that I get from my agency, nor does it include the matching contributions that I get from my agency. That's what I can put in there myself. Now, when I am contributing to my TSP, I have an option for whether I'm going to do traditional TSP or Roth TSP. I want to say for the first time, and I'm going to say this a couple of times, TSP functions similarly to an IRA, but it's not. It's not an IRA. It's not a Roth. It's not a traditional IRA. We call it Roth and traditional because the tax consequences are very similar. I won't say they're exactly the same, but they're very similar. So the Roth became available to federal employees for the first time back in 2012. And this gives me the opportunity to pay my taxes up front, put my money into my investment account, and potentially have some tax-free earnings at the end. So I don't get a tax break on the front end. I do with the traditional. I don't with the Roth. I'm paying the taxes now. However, if I pay the taxes, I put my money in the Roth, and two things are both true. I don't pull this money until I'm at least 59 and a half, and I don't pull this money until that Roth has been open for at least 5 years. Then everything my account makes is tax free. This can be a tremendous reason to participate in the Roth instead of doing traditional, especially if you're just starting out and you can put years worth of money in there and have all of this growth and not ever have to pay taxes on it. Now, both of those things have to be true. I want to be clear on that too, okay? It's got to be open for at least 5 years, plus I got to be at least 59 and a half before I pull, or my earnings are not going to be qualified, which means that they are not going to be tax-free. There's a lot of confusion when it comes to this Roth option. And when I say that it's not a Roth IRA, here's one reason or one way that they're different. Roth IRAs have income restrictions. Every year the number changes, so you can look at the slide that's up here. I'm not going to read it to you, but if I make more than a certain amount, I might be able to contribute something to a Roth, but I'm not able to put the full 6,000 in there. And if I make too much, I can't do a Roth at all because I made too much money. Roth TSP is not a Roth IRA. It has no income restrictions whatsoever. So no matter how much money you make, you can do Roth TSP, even though you might make too much to be able to do a Roth IRA. So that's one reason that they're different. Another reason that they're different is that I can use money from my Roth IRA for a variety of purposes, education, potentially buying a home, very creative things. My Roth TSP is a retirement savings account. It is not used for any purpose other than retirement. Just as Roth TSP is not a Roth IRA, traditional TSP is not a traditional IRA either. So sometimes employees will ask me, can I do both? Can I contribute to my TSP and also contribute to a tax-deferred IRA? And the answer is yes. Maybe. But again, because you have an eligible employer account at work, this TSP, then we have to look at income restrictions. You make up to a certain amount, yes, you can also tax defer in a traditional IRA. But if you make too much money, you can't. So it's not Roth and it's not traditional either. One frequent misunderstanding that I hear from federal employees, especially those who are under FERS, the Federal Employees Retirement System, or in the military, those who are under BRS, which is called the Blended Retirement System. These employees are eligible for matching contributions from their employer, but many of them think that they have to contribute at least 5% of their own money to their traditional TSP in order to get the match from the employer, and that is not correct. That is a misunderstanding. These employees must contribute to their TSP account in order to get matching, and match caps at 5% biweekly. So we're matched dollar for dollar on the first 3%, 50 cents on the dollar for the fourth and fifth percent. I want to get the full match. I got to contribute 5% of my own money, but it just has to go to the box as a whole. It doesn't have to go into traditional. Any money that I get from the government is going to go into traditional, but I can put all of my money into Roth if I want to. So I don't have two separate TSP accounts in that I've got one that's my Roth account and one that's my traditional. No, I've got my TSP account. And so the drawing that I have here on the slide has a roof on the top of that box, which indicates your $19,500 regular and $6,500 catch-up cap over both Roth and traditional. Whereas if you were doing TSP and below the income restrictions, you could also do Roth or traditional tax-deferred IRA. Those are maxed at $6,000 plus an extra $1,000 if you're over 50. This one is the box as a whole. It's not the separate pieces of it. The Roth side, tax now. The traditional side, tax later. Your money can go Roth, traditional, or both. The government's money always goes traditional. Now, Brandon's question specifically was, can you talk a little bit about doing Roth conversions and whether that's a good idea or not? So I want to talk about two things actually, not just the conversions, but also rollovers. You have the ability to roll stuff into your TSP and to roll your TSP out into other things. If you worked somewhere else, you have a 401k, you have a 403b, you have a 457b, it doesn't matter whether those accounts were Roth or traditional because they are eligible employer accounts. You can roll those into TSP if you want to. And if you do, they don't count against your annual limits because those limits are for new contributions and these are existing contributions. So I can bring eligible employer accounts in. I can bring traditional IRAs in. I cannot bring a Roth IRA in because TSP is not an IRA. They do not allow me to bring that Roth IRA in. Roth eligible employer account, yes. Roth IRA, no. Just as I can bring stuff into TSP, I can take TSP out into other things. Either while I'm still working, as long as I'm 59 and a half or older, through an in-service withdrawal, or after I leave the government, regardless of how old I am, I could then decide that I want to roll my TSP into something else. I could roll the traditional into a traditional IRA. I could roll the Roth into a Roth IRA, or I could take my traditional money, pay the taxes that I owe on it, and do a Roth conversion. As we're talking about rollovers, we could do an indirect or a direct rollover, and there's a difference between them. For the direct rollover, you're going to provide the account number and the routing number to TSP. They're going to move the money directly from here to there. It doesn't come through you. There's no taxes. There's no potential penalty. It's just going straight into that other account. Whereas if you do an indirect rollover, then that means the account is going to cash out, send you the money. They normally are required to do a 20% tax withholding when they do that. So you're going to get 80% of the money. You've got 60 days to go and put that into an IRA. And as long as you do, then when you file your taxes at the end of the year, you can request to have that 20% withholding returned to you. It's cleaner, it's easier, it's quicker if you just do that direct rollover. A lot of people are not aware of that, so I want to put that out there just as a bit of information for you. Okay, I've already talked about the fact that we can roll in other accounts. we can roll this out into other stuff. So what's one of the benefits or potential drawbacks of doing this rollover? If you have your money in TSP, as long as you are 55 or older when you retire, you have full access to it. You pay regular income taxes, but you do not have a 10% penalty tax for early distribution. A lot of people talk about a penalty tax because it applies to IRAs that you touch under 59 and a half. But TSP is not an IRA. Remember, I told you that. So the IRA is 59 and a half, the TSP 55 or older, unless you're a special provision employee. If you are a federal firefighter, law enforcement officer, air traffic controller, customs or border protection officer, and you are at least 50 when you retire with your special retirement, you have full access to your TSP. You pay regular income taxes. You do not have that 10% penalty tax. Again, there's a lot of talk about the 59 and a half, but that's a misunderstanding, and that's people simply using the wrong word. So I want to clarify that. A lot of times people will say, okay, I can roll this out. I can roll other stuff in. One of the benefits of rolling the other stuff in is that I can now access it at 50 or 55. Whereas if I roll my TSP out, now I can't access it until I'm 59 and a half. I might still want to do it though, because I might want to invest in things that TSP doesn't offer to me. There are a lot of people who would like to be able to invest in real estate or commodities or precious metals or things of that nature, and we don't have those options with TSP. So if you want to do that, yes, rolling it out into something else may be something that you want to do. If you are contemplating rolling your TSP out, remember what I said, you can't touch it until you're 59 and a half now, unless you pay that 10% penalty tax. But also make sure that you know what you're paying with that other account. One of the biggest benefits of TSP is its cost. We pay on average about 1/5 of what other money managers will charge to manage our money. So just make sure that you're checking that out and you know exactly what you're getting into. One of the benefits of rolling other stuff in or rolling this out is that if all of my money is in one type of account, whether that's an IRA or whether that's my eligible employer accounts, if it's all in one kind, then when I'm 72, I only have to do one distribution. Whereas if I've got a little bit of money in this kind of account, a little bit of money in that kind of account, I've got to do a required distribution from both of those accounts when I'm 72. So that's something that you need to be aware of as well if you're thinking about merging things together. When it comes to a conversion, so a rollover is just I'm moving my traditional account to another traditional account or my Roth account to another Roth account. A conversion means that I'm pulling out my traditional money that has not been taxed yet. I am going to pay the taxes on it, and I'm going to now put that money into the Roth. Benefits of doing this, and I'm looking at my slides, so I know, I'm darting around all over the place, but that's because I have to look over here to see the slides. One reason that you might want to do this Roth conversion is because you believe that you're going to be in a higher income tax bracket later on. Because when I do the Roth, I pay today's tax rate, I don't pay tomorrow's. When I do traditional, I don't pay today's tax rate, I pay tomorrow's tax rate. So where do you think that you're going to be in the most advantageous tax situation? Do you think that that's right now? Or do you think that that may be later after you retire, you're making less money, potentially you're going to be in a lower income tax bracket? That's one of the things to consider. One of the things that a lot of people are worried about right now is that taxes will likely go up. Not a political statement in any way, but we've got a lot of things that we're paying for right now as far as the federal government goes. So where's that money coming from? One place it might come from is taxes. So people worry that taxes are going to go up, in which case there are a lot of people that are rushing out there right now to do Roth conversions to pay today's tax rate so that they don't have to pay tomorrow's tax rate. I'm not weighing in on that. I'm saying it's something for you definitely to think about. How do you feel about it? What do you think? is going to happen, and then you make your own decision. One time that making a Roth conversion might be particularly helpful for you is if you already have some loss that you're reporting on your income taxes. Because remember, when I take this money from my tax deferred and I do a Roth conversion, it counts on my income taxes in the year that I do that conversion. So if I have a loss, then I can offset some of those taxes from doing my Roth conversion. For a Roth IRA, I do not have to do the required minimum distribution at 72. That does apply to traditional IRAs. It does also apply to your TSP as a whole. A lot of people are not aware of that. I didn't know that either for a long time. I think it was Susan that brought that up to me, that said if it's in a Roth eligible employer account, which is what TSP is, you do have to do required minimum distribution at 72, even though your taxes have already been paid. Whereas if you take it out of TSP and you put it into a Roth IRA, it does not require a distribution at 72. So I want you to be aware of that. Another thing, if I'm thinking about, the tax consequences might not just be federal income tax, but am I going to move after I retire? And if I move, is that tax going to be higher with the state? Because remember, when I'm pulling out tax deferred money, it counts as income. So now if my state has an income tax, I'm going to have to pay that too. Conversely, maybe I'm moving to a state that isn't going to have a state income tax, even though I'm living in one right now. So if I do the Roth conversion, I got to pay the taxes now. If I do the traditional, I got to pay those taxes later. There's a lot to think about when it comes to this. It is not a one size fits all. And it's incredibly frustrating to me when people act like it is. Everybody needs to be doing this. No, everybody doesn't. Maybe this is a really good idea for you. Maybe it's not. There's a whole bunch of stuff that you need to consider before you make this decision. One thing that I want to put out there as a word of caution, if you are doing a Roth conversion with the traditional money that you're pulling out, you do have to pay taxes on it. It's a very good idea if you have the money set aside to pay those taxes. Because if you're paying the taxes out of the money that you're pulling from traditional before you put it into Roth, you're putting less money in there. With compounding, that means over time it's going to make less money for you. And if you take money out of your traditional account and pay the taxes in order to do a Roth conversion, it counts as a distribution. Not only are taxes due, but if you're under the 55 or the 50, you also have that 10% penalty tax due. And I don't think that everybody's aware of that. So be careful with that as well. Know where you are within the tax brackets. Because if you are pulling out a large sum of money and doing a Roth conversion, it counts on your income taxes this year, along with everything else. So if you're close to the top of an income tax bracket, here they are, this is from the IRS website this morning. If you're close to the top of an income tax bracket and you do a Roth conversion, you could be pushing yourself into a higher income tax bracket too. So be careful with that. Know where you are. Maybe you're going to do a conversion just up to the top, but you're not going to push yourself into a higher income tax bracket. This RMD that I talk about, this required minimum distribution, is not until April 1st of the year after you turn 72. It used to be 70 and a half. So if you still have that idea in your head, yes, that was right. They changed that back in December of 2019. Now it's 72. So I've got to start drawing, not cashing out, but start taking a distribution April 1st of the year after I turn 72 or April 1st of the year after I leave my job, whichever is later. And the Internal Revenue Service does this, I'll come back to that slide in a minute, does this based upon our life expectancy. So right on their website, irs.gov, you can pull up the RMD chart find your age at the time that you're withdrawing, and it will give you your actuary factor. So you take your account balance, you divide by that actuary factor, and the answer is your required minimum distribution. You can take more than that if you want to. If you take less than that, though, you're going to get in trouble with the Internal Revenue Service. And the slide that I skipped over comes directly from TSP's website. So remember I said that Roth IRA does not have a required minimum distribution, but Roth TSP does. So here you can see it in writing. This is just from TSP's website. Again, if you weren't aware of that, don't feel bad. I wasn't aware of it for a while either, but that is true. So what does this mean? This means that if you have your money in Roth TSP and you don't want to have to take a distribution from that Roth money, you may want to roll that outside of the government. You may want to roll that into a Roth IRA so that you do not have to take that required distribution when you're 72. My disclaimer, I need lights and flashing things and everything else going on. I am not a certified financial planner, a tax accountant, a tax attorney. I am not giving you advice. I did want to share some information that I hope gets you thinking, maybe talking to your professionals who are helping you with your taxes and your financial planning so that you can make a really good decision about whether this is something that you want to do or not. If you are planning to do a Roth conversion, time is of the essence. Roths have to be open for a full 5 years, even if you're over the age of 59 and a half, if you want your earnings to be tax-free. That's one of the biggest reasons to do it. So make sure that you do allow yourself that 5 years of getting it in there. Also, staging your Roth conversions, doing a little bit this year and a little bit next year and a little bit the year after that can help you to spread out your tax consequences instead of doing all of it in one tax year. Be aware of this too. Right now, we can do Roth conversions, but that's only because a prohibition allowing us to do it expired and we've allowed it to continue, but this is not a right. That loophole could be closed at any time. I'm not saying it's going to be. It has been discussed recently. So if you want to do a Roth conversion, my advice would be that you check into it and you do it as soon as possible while you still have the opportunity to do it. Okay, so how am I doing on time? I think I went a little bit over, but hopefully it's helpful. If you have any questions, please leave me a comment. Let me know what they are. Send me a private message. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have. If you have suggestions or things that you want me to talk about in future live episodes, let me know about that as well. I really appreciate you being here. I hope you have a great rest of your Friday and a wonderful weekend. Take care.